It's not something I ever planned to do, but this is a story I would tell. There are some things that are better lost and stored away in the recesses of your mind. Sometimes, though, those dark places find you again, no matter how far you run. I bought the house on Willow Street, which was the first step. I told myself it was a new start. It had new paint, big windows, and a lot of room. I had no idea what I was getting into. It was clear that the house was old, the kind of place that had been around for a long time and stood strong through weather, history, and secrets. It seemed good to me at the time, though. The place felt like home when the real estate agent showed it to me. I was looking for something cheap. She didn't say much about how it got there. She skipped over a lot of the points. I didn't understand how much she had left out until much later. It was quiet the first night. I slowly moved in, putting things in order and putting chairs where I thought it would look good. It was almost too quiet in the rooms. But I thought it was just because I was in a new place, getting away from the city's noise. Still, something didn't seem right about the house. The air felt thick, like it was pushing down on me, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Little things began to happen over the course of the days. It started with sounds that were pretty quiet at first. I heard steps on the stairs while I was upstairs, and the sound of a door creaking open even though I knew no one was moving. I thought I saw something out of the corner of my eye, like a shadow moving just outside my line of sight. But every time I looked, there was nothing there. I tried to ignore it by telling myself it was all in my head. After that, I found an old picture hidden under some junk one night while I was unpacking boxes in the living room. It was black and white and showed a girl who looked to be about 10 or 12 years old standing in front of the house I had just bought. She was wearing white, and her hair was long and dark. She had a small smile on her face. I didn't feel good about the shot. I could not take my eyes off of hers. They seemed far away and empty. After that, the nights got worse. When I woke up in the middle of the night, I felt like someone was watching me. My heart would beat fast and my skin would itch. But there was no one there when I opened my eyes. I told myself I was just tired and stressed out from moving. I knew it was more than that, though. About 2 weeks after moving in, I heard something I couldn't avoid one night. It was very late, after midnight. I was getting ready to fall asleep when I heard a scream. But it wasn't outside. It came from inside the house, the basement to be exact. The sound was high-pitched and scary, and it scared me right through this body. My heart was beating fast as I sat up in bed. I thought about staying put and acting like I hadn't heard anything for a moment, but I couldn't explain what made me get out of bed. I crept down the stairs, leaving barely any sound on the wooden floor as I used my phone as a torch. Even though it was cold outside, the house felt even colder. The air felt heavier and thicker with each step I took. When I got to the door to the basement, I stopped. Even though the scream was over, I could still hear it in my head. I turned the handle slowly and stepped down into the dark. The stairs squeaked as I walked down them, and the air got cooler as I went down. The light from my flashlight flickered, making walls have long shadows. I stopped moving at the bottom of the stairs. The girl from the picture was standing in the far corner of the basement. She was still wearing the same white dress, and her hair was loose around her face. When her eyes locked on mine, I could feel the chill going through my body. But her presence wasn't the only thing that scared me. She looked like she didn't belong in this world anymore. We stood there and looked at each other for what seemed like hours. She slowly raised her hand and pointed to the wall far away. At first I didn't get it, but as I looked after her I saw something odd. A part of the wall looked like it was fixed quickly because it looked newer than the rest. It was hard for me to get closer, but I didn't have to. I could tell everything from the girl's eyes. There was a terrible event in the basement. Something was hidden behind the walls and covered up. She was now stuck and couldn't move on. The rest of the night, I couldn't sleep. By morning, I knew what I was going to do. That house was not safe for me to stay in. It wasn't something I could live with, whatever had happened there or was still inside those walls. The next day, I put the house on the market. It didn't bother me that I would lose money. I only wanted to leave. I dug some holes before I left. I had to find out what happened and why that girl was still there. What I found was even worse than I thought it would be. A young girl was killed by her aunt in that house many years ago. People said that her body was in the basement, but they never found it. There was talk about putting up walls where there weren't any before. I didn't go back to Willow Street. That house is still there, as far as I know, ready for its next target. One thing, though, I'm okay with. The girl in the white dress will always be in my mind, and I hope she finds peace one day. I've always liked being alone, but living in a house by myself in the Alaskan forest was a whole new level of being alone. Thomas was my next-door neighbor and lived about 5 minutes away on foot. His house was the only one for miles. I moved here to get some peace and quiet, and this was the best spot. The area was bordered by thick forests, and at night it was so quiet it was almost painful to hear. That kind of quiet that makes you think you're the only person in the world. Thomas had been nice from the start. He was nice all the time, even though he was a bit older than me, maybe in his late 50s. He helped me move in, told me how to live in the woods, and sometimes even brought me bread that he had baked himself. It seemed like I couldn't ask for a better friend. I was sitting on the couch one night and watching a movie. The trees swayed and bent because of the strong wind outside. There was a fire going to try to keep the cold Alaskan winter away. Someone knocked on my door just as I was getting lost in the story. It shocked me because I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked up to the door and looked through the crack. It was Thomas, which surprised me. He gave me a forced smile when I opened the door. "What's up, Thomas?" I asked as I moved out of the way to let him in. I didn't want to leave the door open for too long because the wind was cold. He thought about it for a second before going in. He said in a low voice, "I saw someone near your house. They were just walking around the area in a circle. I thought I would come tell you." I got a cold feeling in my stomach. Not having anyone else around made the thought of a stranger waiting outside less than pleasant. "Thanks for letting me know," I said, and then I shut the door behind him. "Did you see them well?" Thomas turned his head away. "That person or thing didn't belong here, it was too dark." I thanked him once more. He left after making small talk for a while. I locked the door and looked out the windows too. Everything looked safe. I couldn't get rid of the thought of someone walking around my house. Just in case, I checked the back door again. Finally, I went to sleep. It wasn't easy for me to get rid of my anxiety and sleep. The house didn't feel as quiet as normal because the wind outside hadn't stopped. I think I fell asleep for a while because the next thing I remember is hearing someone talking outside when I woke up. They were real. At first I thought I was dreaming. I woke up and walked over to the window, but I was still sleepy and confused. The door was open just enough to let a cold breeze in. My heart skipped a beat when I looked outside. Thomas stood next to the house with other people around him. He was standing with a man I didn't know who had his back to me. They were talking, but I couldn't understand what they said. For a moment I looked at them and tried to figure out what was going on. Thomas may have gone out to find the guy he saw earlier. It was too much for me to think about, so I shook my head. It's possible that they caught the stranger, and now everything was okay. It still felt wrong. I shut the window and pulled the covers up to my chin as I got back into bed. I told myself it was nothing and tried to fall back asleep. Then I heard a loud crash coming from the basement. My heart stopped beating. My heart was beating fast as I sat up in bed and listened for any other sounds. Broken glass had been making that sound, the window in my living room. There was no doubt about it. My mind was going crazy. Someone broke in, right? I quickly went to the window in my bedroom and looked out again. Thomas was still there, but the person he was with was gone. The crash didn't make him move or do anything. He did nothing but stare at my house. Really, something was wrong. I locked the door to my bedroom and took out my phone. As I called 911, my hands were shaking. When I told the operator what had happened, I tried to keep my voice calm. They told me that police were on their way. My heart was beating fast as I stayed in my room and listened for any more sounds coming from downstairs. I thought it had been hours, but then I heard sirens far away. I felt a wave of relief. The cops showed up quickly, and after a few tense minutes, found the person who broke in. He got in through the window in the living room, but he wasn't yet upstairs. That wasn't the end of it, though. The cops found something disturbing after questioning me and searching the area. The person who broke into my house wasn't just any stranger. Thomas had been in touch with him for a long time. They found texts between them where they were planning something terrible. Even though I didn't know everything, it was clear that Thomas wasn't the nice friend I thought he was. He had been keeping an eye on me and making plans for tonight. Thomas was caught by the cops, and I never saw him again. Soon after, I sold the house. After what had happened, I could not stay there. When I moved to New York City, I was no longer alone in the Alaskan desert. I still remember that night, though. The weather was bad, and I was 7 years old. Jenny, who was watching me while I was at home, and I played a board game on the living room floor. The people I live with went to see my sick grandmother. Jenny stayed with me the night because they didn't want me to go with them. The windows were being hit hard by the rain, which made the house feel like a warm bubble. I liked Jenny because she was nice. She was always happy and told me funny stories. There was a knock on the door while we were deep in our game. It was a surprise. They wouldn't come back for hours. Jenny stood up and looked a little interested. "Who could it be?" she said to herself as she went to the door. The game pieces were all over the place where I was sitting. I wasn't scared, I just didn't understand. She opened the door and saw a girl standing there, wet from the rain. Jenny might have been a few years younger than her. She was shaking as she talked because her hair was stuck to her face. She said in a soft voice, "My car broke down right outside your house. May I use your phone?" Jenny looked out the window and saw that the car was parked in a strange way on the street. It was still going, but its lights were dim from the rain. The girl didn't look dangerous. She was very nice, almost too nice. Jenny moved out of the way and let her in. When the girl walked into the house, Jenny gave her a towel to wipe her face with after shaking off some of the rain. Now the house felt different. It was no longer warm and cozy. Something was wrong because it felt tense. The girl's eyes kept moving around the room, like she wasn't paying attention to the phone call at all. It gave me the creeps. Jenny gave her the phone, but there was another loud knock at the door before she could even pick it up. It wasn't soft this time. It felt like someone was beating on the door. Jenny stood still for a moment as the girl turned pale, or going back to the door. The door flew open, though, before Jenny could get to the handle. A man walked in with a wild and angry look on his face. My heart stopped when I saw that he had a gun in his hand. The girl moved back, but not because she was scared. It looked like she was ready for this. The man yelled at us with a gun and said, "Stay where you are." Jenny let out a gasp and quickly moved away. I sat there on the floor, frozen and scared to move. The girl wasn't blameless. She was always a part of this. The man was allowed to come in. As he quickly looked around the room, his eyes went from me to Jenny to the house itself. The girl stood still by the door and didn't look scared at all as he barked directions at her. He told her to check the rooms, and she started walking around, opening drawers and looking through my parents' things right away. I could hear her going through the house and taking anything that looked valuable. The man stood by the door and kept a close eye on us. He always had his gun with him. Jenny was pale and scared, but she kept her cool. She moved slowly over to sit down on the couch next to me. She said in a whisper, "It'll be okay," but I could tell she was scared. I had faith in her, but I couldn't. The sound of the rain filling the room made everything seem far away. It felt like it was getting heavy outside. I couldn't take my eyes off of the man because I was afraid something bad would happen if I did. He picked up small things in the living room that looked expensive, like my mom's jewelry and my dad's watch. The girl came back to the front of the house right before the man told her to hurry up. She told him, "I think we're good." They worked together like they had done this before. With a nod, he looked at the front door and got ready to leave. Something did happen, though, as the girl reached for the lock. People in the front seats saw a bright flash of headlights. There was a car right in front of our house. It wasn't the girl's broken-down car. It was someone else. The girl's face turned pale again as the man cursed under his breath. It was the police. The man took a step back and thought about running, but it was too late. The police officers got out of their car and walked up the steps to our front door. The girl stood there still when the man turned to her. She didn't know what to do. She wasn't ready for this. It was a loud knock, but no one answered. So the cops pushed the door open and walked in. The man tried to get away, but the police moved quickly. They yelled at him to put down the gun, and after a nervous moment, he did. They took him and the girl by the hands, put them in handcuffs, and led them outside into the rain. Jane and I didn't move because we were scared. The police officer came over to check on us, and that's when I knew it was over. The man and the strange car were seen by my neighbor, Mr. Thompson, who called the cops. They were shocked when they got home soon after, and happy to see that we were safe. They gave me a tight hug and said that something like this would never happen again. I was sure I would never forget that night, though. The girl, the rain, and the man who walked in out of nowhere. That night changed the way I saw the world. I remember it so well that it makes me sad when it rains now.